Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for this webinar. I'm Guillaume Boisvert, I'm Product Director for Security Compliance Backup Products here at SherWeb. And today's webinar is Threat Talk, which, well, I thought was a good name, sound like a talk show. Basically, we're going to talk a little bit about new security approach that the bad guys have towards Office 365 and other systems, but obviously with a focus on Office 365. Give you a little bit of insight. And then we'll talk about a couple of the solutions that SherWeb offer to their partner. The idea is you'll learn a few new things, I hope, around how people are attacking Office 365. Not really to give you something to do this weekend. Attacking Office 365 is probably not a good hobby, but the more you know, basically, is the saying. So let's get going. This is booked for an hour. I don't know if we'll go the hour. What I'm hoping is you guys have a lot of questions. If you do have questions, put them in the Q&A section of the software that we're using for this webinar. Also wanted you to know that this webinar is recorded. We will package it and then send it to everybody that would registered for the webinar in the next few days. I'm thinking early next week. So if you have to leave mid-webinar or something, it's okay, don't feel bad. I do hope that you will ask questions. That's the idea. I'm alone today doing this webinar, so nobody to discuss security with. Security is always a good topic to discuss and interact on. So do feel encouraged to participate. A little bit on the agenda today. I'll talk a little bit about the growing popularity of Office 365. You may have heard me talk about that before. The idea as Office 365 is becoming more and more of a business critical aspect of the people that use it, especially when we're talking about small, medium businesses, is very critical. And hackers and attackers and people that do ransomware and things like that, it's actually very simple how they work. So the idea for them is that they find the highest value target and they attack them. So if everybody's using, excuse me just a second. So if everybody's using Office 365, then they'll spend all their time figuring out how to attack Office 365. It's always been like that. It's a very simple principle. Let me just close that. Thank you. All right. So after that, we'll talk about the specific attacks that I was mentioning, some new stuff around Office 365. Then we'll get into what you can do to help defend your organization. And then we'll get into that Q&A. If you have questions, don't wait till the end. Ask them as we go. So let's get going. Why is Office 365 now such a target? So this is a study that was done by a security service provider called Sky High Networks, good company. I've talked to them often. And it found a few things. So 91% of companies that were in the study were using Office 365 in some fashion. So 91% is such a high market share when we're talking about business that when I was saying that it becomes a target, an obvious target for attackers, that's what we mean. Also a bit mind-boggling, 17% of files in OneDrive and SharePoint contain sensitive information like credit card numbers, social security numbers, business plans, financial records, user password. So all these files that I'm describing here, they all have value for the hackers, and that's what they'll target. Also, the other way around, when people are storing sensitive information, 50-60% of the time they'll put it in Office 365, OneDrive, or SharePoint. That is a lot. And like I said, people, if they're going to invest the time to create scripts and ransomware and everything, they'll target things that are very popular. It's the basic premise of why there's so few viruses for Macs, and it's been said often like Macs are very secure. Well, they're also not nearly as ubiquitous. Like there aren't that many Macs. So if you create a successful virus for Mac, you'll infect a lot fewer people than if you create a successful virus for Windows. Another way that Office 365 has become very, very popular is that we can see it in the phishing email. So phishing emails are emails that are written to make you believe that you should take action XYZ. So for a popular example is you get an email that says, hey, you need to update your password. And then you go in, you put in your password, and somebody has stolen your password. Or more targeted than that, we see like CEO attacks, things like that, which is, hey, you need to send money here. It's the CEO asking for it type of thing. And basically what the study by VatiSecure, which is email security company, is that The number one brand used for those emails, those evil email, is Microsoft. And it has a huge increase, 60% since the last study. So in the last 6 months, an increase in 60%. You can see the other usual culprit there. It's no big surprise. Banks, PayPal, things like that. I remember when, in my days, I'm old now, a lot of PayPal, like a lot of PayPal, some eBay, some PayPal, but you can see eBay's not even on there anymore. Change of time, it makes sense that Microsoft is first. I'm expecting to see Google show up here eventually. Apple and Google were on the list. The list is a lot longer than that if you want to look it up, but they're a little further down. So what does it all mean for the organizations that are using Office 5? It means that on average, they get 2.7 events each month in their Office 5. And what kind of event? Well, compromised accounts are one. So somebody from the outside compromises one of your account, gets access to things they're not supposed to. Insider threats, which is basically somebody that's in your organization does something they're not supposed to or access something they're not supposed to. And then privileged user threats is basically somebody that has too much permission. So they're not supposed to have access to something, but they do have access to it. That's a lot, 2.7 on average. That's a lot of action. So let's talk about what I'm seeing out there and has been reported as being a bit of a different approach. I have 3 different things. The first one is low and slow. I just wanted to put barbecue in my presentation. It was hard to find a way to fit that in, but I had to find a way, and it does fit the type of attack. So classic attack on accounts is brute force. So you have an account you want to hack. So for example, my account here at SherWeb, you remotely try to log in and you try every single password under the sun or every variation. You have something that generates a whole bunch of passwords and you attack. You try until you get through. So that's a brute force attack. That has been sort of understood and is usually well defended. Not always, I have to say. I've seen studies where it shows that even those attacks are not well defended, but usually there's going to be account lockout, or at least there's going to be throttling, so you can't do it very quickly. And if you're doing brute force and you need to go through like 1 million or 1 billion different passwords, if you're being slowed down, it could take a long time. And obviously hackers, it has to be realistic, meaning the cost has to be to match the reward. So if it takes 2 years to break into a random account, that's probably too expensive unless that account is like Donald Trump's account. So basically what people are doing now is low and slow. So basically what they'll do, they'll use a bunch of different IPs, and we've seen that in brute force as well, but to do slow and slow, it really makes sense. So either zombies or cloud services. That's another thing that we see a lot of. I've seen it in even here at SherWeb, people that are trying to exploit our services. What they'll do is they'll sign up for a infrastructure as a service like DigitalOcean or Google Cloud Service or Azure or whatever. And then from those virtual machines, they'll perform their attack, exploit, or scam, or whatever it is. So they'll use a whole bunch of IP address, and then they'll do a few attempts on all accounts. So basically, instead of targeting one account 1 billion times, which is very obvious, if you have any logging, anything, any defense on it, you'll block it. What they'll do is they'll take all accounts and then send just a few try. So they'll do targeted accounts and then they'll do password spraying. We'll talk about password spraying in just a second. But basically low and slow means you use a bunch of accounts and you do it very slowly. Usually it's either, if you're doing a high value target, it could take forever. It's not a big problem. So it's worth it to wait months and months to finally break in, but undetected. Or if you're doing a whole bunch and the volume is good, so you're basically attacking like 1 billion accounts, but you only do a few attempts on each, that also has a lot of value. These things combined together, you'll see like all the things I'll talk about today, they're usually combination. So like I said, low and slow usually use password spraying. Password spraying is one of my favorite ones. Different password attempt. Yeah, so the idea here is that if you're gonna attack and send a whole bunch of passwords, it's gonna lock you out. So password spraying is, instead of using 1 million different attempts, they'll take just the most popular passwords and use them on a bunch of accounts. So for example, I'm attacking a large organization, a university or something that has thousands of accounts. And then I'm attacking it using only, let's say, the top, like I'll figure out what's your lockout policy. I'll do that on a single account. I'll do it quietly from a random IP address. And once I know that, let's say I have 20 attempts before I get locked out, I'm going to use the 19 most popular passwords, and I'm going to use it on all your accounts. And you just know, and you guys can argue with me, let me know in the comment box, but you just know somebody has password 123 as his password, or password with the A change for ampersand or something like that, with a 1 at the end, and he thinks he's very clever because he put a 1 at the end. So those passwords, they're well known, the lists are well known, the most popular passwords, those are public lists. And what they'll do is they'll target thousands of accounts and then use those passwords. The clever people will tailor those lists to the people that are attacking. So basically they'll put the name of the city or the name of the local sport team in that list. They'll put the year, the current year in the password, things like that. And that will usually increase the success rate. One thing of note, you can get the list of Office 365 users from outside the organization. It's a feature. I don't know if I talk about it further, but I'll talk about it here. So in investigating Office, so Office 365 is a very secure platform. They get tested all the time. Like they pay for service, for certification, plus they get attacked all the time, obviously, and they prevent those attacks. And one of the things that came out of one of the certification that is actually public to partners, so you as an Office 365 partner can go and consult those reports from Microsoft, is that there is a way to enumerate all the accounts on an Office 365 organization because it's part of the discovery from Azure AD. So basically what you do is you get all the account names, and from there you use password spraying to test all those accounts with the most popular passwords. So if you think this is sort of, I'm describing a theoretical thing that's hard to do, there's a public tool online called Spray from Spider Labs, and it basically does just that. You feed it a list of passwords and you feed it a list of accounts, and it will test all these passwords on these accounts. So these tools are commonly available if they're public like that from people that, this is to help you test your own organization, but if they're here, you know that the bad guys also have them. Another attack that's been going on, this one was reported by Sky High Networks that I was talking about before, is Knock Knock. And basically what Knock Knock was, and they always try to find clever names so they can brand the attacks, but Knock Knock was basically targeted attacks on system accounts. So it combined it with low and slow, so it went very slowly. But instead of trying to break into every account, they targeted system accounts. So service accounts that do provisioning, accounts for automations or marketing tools, accounts for internal tools like Jira or GitHub or things like that, or even shared mailbox accounts. And why would they target these accounts in particular? Well, there's a few reasons. One of them is usually those accounts have elevated privileges, so they can do things, they can do more things. So if you break into one, then you have access to more things. Usually they don't have multi-factor authentication, which is more and more popular, and we'll talk about that in just a second, but it's very hard for an automated system to get access to, well, it's very hard to hack into an account that has multi-factor authentication. But all those systems, they can't do multi-factor authentication. It's very hard for a script to sort of deal with multi-factor authentication. So all those things combined made it a very interesting attack, and it went very slowly, but it prodded and tested all those specific accounts and broke into a lot of companies that way. Another one, which I think is very, very interesting. This one's a theoretical for now. So this one, you can see it comes from KnowBe4, which is a security company, and they did it as a proof of concept. When I say proof of concept, I mean proof of concept for now, meaning that once the knowledge is out there, it's likely that it will eventually be weaponized and used as an actual account. So basically what this particular one was very targeted to Office 365 and Office 365 email, which makes it very relevant for our conversation today. But basically what they did is they used phishing as an attack vector. So you would get an email that would say, hey, we're upgrading our spam software for Office 365. You need to go into your account. And basically that would lead you to your account where you would log in and authorize this new spam software. Turns out it wasn't spam software, it was ransomware. And that third-party app, what it would do, it would encrypt all your email. So once you give access, once you approve a third-party app, it has access to do just about anything in your environment. And then what it did basically is it encrypted everything, and it would ask for ransomware to decrypt everything. I thought it was a very clever way to target a new kind of system like Office 365. There is some, you still need to get somebody to fall for a phishing email, but if you've been working in IT and managed services, you know people fall for phishing, like especially targeted phishing. Like you build a good phishing email that says, hey, with the company name and the guy's role and some of his colleagues, and you can really do a little bit of investigation and build a great phishing email. And that's something that people will fall for. So I'm not going to play the video today, but there's a very interesting video of that showing this in action. You can see all the emails going from normal to encrypted, like live, and it's very scary. There is some solutions though to prevent that. We'll get to that. So those are a few examples of the things that are happening now. One of them is theoretical. The other ones were very practical. What to do. So we'll talk about training and awareness, increasing your baseline security using advanced protection, and then recovery. Have another webinar scheduled for later that will be about the different layers of security, and we'll talk about that in more detail. But to give you a sense, training and awareness is, if you don't do it, it's a big mistake. You have to do training and awareness. You can have all the technology that you want, all the restrictions that you want. Somebody will find a way to click on something they're not supposed to if they don't know, if they don't understand why they should or shouldn't, what they should look for, things like that. So the idea here is you have to teach them how to fish instead of giving them a fish. So that's the whole saying. If somebody understands what security is, what people are trying to do to them, like what attackers are trying to do to them and everything, they will do much better than just if you have blockers and phishing prevention and everything, because there's always something that's going to get through. And then when something gets through, what you want are smart users. So if you have smart users, you'll probably be okay. SherWeb does have an e-learning solution now. It's new from a couple of months ago. It's called Quick Help. There is a very good security section in it. It's not the end all be all. You'll get a lot of training on a lot of subject, but a security section, I've gone through it and it's actually very good, and it does talk about phishing prevention. So I'm going to advanced protection now because I'll come back to the baseline security. Advanced protection is a good idea as well. It is especially a good idea if you have clients that are bound by legal or compliance requirements. Meaning that if somebody legally has to respect some standards, or if they're a bank, or if they work in insurance, they probably legally have to meet standards of security, and then it becomes much, much, much easier to have the conversation with them about what they need to do to meet those compliance requirements. It's great for consulting, implementation. There's a lot of service opportunities for you as a partner, and you should have those conversations. Today's webinar is not a good place to get you trained up on some of those security solutions, but do talk to your partner here at SherWeb. We have a lot of security of those solutions. I put a few examples here at the bottom of the slides. Proofpoint is a good one when it comes to email security. We have Protected Trust, good as well for email security. And then we get into the Microsoft product as well, like E3 includes, EMS E3 is a security specific SKU, or something like E5, which includes just about everything, including a lot of security. One thing of note, the last bullet I have there is complexity can defeat adoption. You have to be careful. And this has been proven many times. Very, 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 very secure and restrictive system will often get people to have very bad behavior. So you put in place a very secure system, you put in place a very secure system, and then people find a way to defeat it. So I'll give you the example of good old password policy. You go crazy on the password policy. It requires like 15 characters, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, special characters. It needs to change every month, and you can't use the last 12 that you've used before. And you're like, my passwords are the most secure ever. Problem with that is people can't remember the password. So then it leads to bad behavior. They will write them down on their desktop in a text file, and they'll put the password in there. They'll put them on a Post-it and stick it under their keyboard because there's no way they can remember it. So this is you as a partner are the one that is responsible to make sure that convenience is still considered when implementing security. Security and convenience will always fight. It is always one at the detriment of the other. It is very hard to be extremely secure and have extremely convenient systems. But the balance has to be found. If somebody works in a nuclear center, then convenience is just going to have to suffer. If somebody works at a mechanic, like a garage, then maybe you want to consider that when you put in security systems. So last but not least, baseline security. So we'll talk about that a bit more. For people that are in unregulated environments, you're going to have a hard sell, like selling them advanced systems that are expensive. The MSC3, for example, is almost $10 a user a month. It's a hard sell. I'm not telling you it's easy. But that doesn't mean you can't increase their baseline security. So what most of my partners are doing with those people is obviously they're selling them managed services. They make security part of that managed service, and then they use tools to help them do that easily and without investing as much time in it. So I'm a very generous person, very nice guy. I put 7 things here you can do for free to Office 365 to make it more secure for all your clients. So I won't go into detail for all of them, but if you go to that blog entry there, you'll get the slide deck that goes into details and explain each and every one of them. I think most of them are pretty obvious. You need to turn on audits. Their audits are off by default. It doesn't prevent any security issues, but if you have a security issues, you go in Office 365 and the audits are off, you have no idea what happened. You can't tell your client, oh, well, this client or this user was acting to did whatever. It will be very hard to give any information. So that's baseline. You have to do this. If you don't have that, do it today. You have to turn on email audits because yes, it is 2 different sets of audits. There's a couple of things about it. One, it has to be done through PowerShell, which makes it a bit of a pain in the ass. The other thing is Microsoft has announced they'll be now turning it on by default. So the email audits will be on by default. Good news. It hasn't been done for everybody. You can look. And then I'll get into Office Protect, which is a SherWeb product that can help you with that. You should enable multi-factor authentication. So every Office 365 account has access to multi-factor authentication. At a minimum, turn it on for your admin accounts. So if you have global admins and everything, give them multi-factor authentication. Make it a little harder to break into those better accounts. Set up outbound spam notification. Basically, if one of your account, like internal, if one of your Office 365 users starts spamming the world, you should know. So just turn that on, put in your email. You'll know if one of your accounts is spamming. It means one of 2 things. Either your users having some very bad behavior, but that's pretty surprising. Most often it means that account was broken into and you want to take action. Block bad file extension. You would think that was obvious. That when I saw that, it brought me back to my days, early days of email. Bad file extension like .scr and .bas and things like that are not necessarily blocked by default. Definitely turn that on. Block just about everything. I mean, what kind of extension do you get in an email that is valid? Word file, a zip, possibly PDF. Like there's not a whole lot. Passwords that never expire. So that goes back to what I was saying. Too strict a password policy is bad. So the NIST, which is the National Institute for Standard and Technology in the US, basically put out recommendations around security. And one of the things they said is passwords shouldn't expire unless there's a reason to believe they've been hacked. So if they've been compromised, you should change your password. Otherwise, it should never expire. This leads to much better behavior by users. The thing is, people go, oh, well, that's not super safe. The idea is to combine it with multi-factor authentication. So reasonable password complexity, so no special characters, things like that. Good length, like they need to be long enough, and then combined with some other form of security, tokens or MSMS and things like that. And then the last one is not something you can turn on, but it's something you can do is check the unified event report. So basically it's called the audit log. It's in the portal under security and compliance. It is a giant pain in your ass to read. It's very hard to read. There's a lot of events in there, but the events are in there. So the information is there. Let me help you with your baseline security with your partners. Talk a little bit, like I'm not hiding it. The goal of this webinar is to talk to you about Office Protect. Basically, we created a software as a service that you can subscribe to, put in your tenant, your Office 365 tenant, and it will apply industry best practice in one click. You can apply it to multiple clients with just one click as well. It will monitor events with a practical sense. So instead of giving you like 1,000 events, it will give you 5, but they're clear and you know what happened. It will help you to do a lot of work for your clients for little time investment. It's nice to sell security, but if you have to read like 100 pages of logs every day for your client, you're going to have to sell it for a high price, and then it will be a hard sell. The idea here is don't invest a ton of time, make sure baseline security is good, and when something happens, you can just go and intervene with your client. You can do it when something happens. It will also help you have regular touch point. I don't go in much more detail. I think the idea here with Office Protect is you should talk to your partner account or sign up with SherWeb. I don't know if everybody knows, there is now access to a not for resale program at SherWeb. So basically, we will give you big discounts on our products if you're using them on your own organization. So for example, everything excluding Office 365, because you can't give big discount on Office 365. I think everybody knows why. But for example, for Office Protect, you can get it for free on your own organization. That will give you the best. That's the best way to know how it works, what it can do for you, and have a look and become comfortable before you start offering it to your other clients. So that's what I recommend today. My big call to action, and I'll come back to that, is get Office Protect on your own Office 365 tenant. I mentioned recovery. Recovery, you gotta have it. It doesn't matter how much work you do for security upfront, like the prevention and the detection. You gotta have recovery because eventually something bad will happen. It may be completely your fault, completely the fault of your client. Like it may be a complete bad luck, but you gotta have recovery. So it's great for clients who don't want to pay for security, especially. So if they have no security upfront, you better make sure your recovery is great. It's the best way to be a client's hero when something bad happens, especially if it's the client's fault. If you have a good recovery plan, it takes just a few minutes to fix that problem, you're a hero. And it's pretty much the only way to get out of ransomware. So if you get ransomware, backup is the only way to go, and ideally cloud backups, because ransomware will go after local backups. So a couple of things from SherWeb. We have online backup. It's a great solution for everybody. And we also have Veeam Cloud Connect, which is great for people that use Veeam on premise. It's the easiest way to get stuff offsite. So I'm going very quickly, but we had a lot of things to cover. There's much deeper that we can dig in each of those things. I think the takeaway from today is you should have those conversations with your clients. There's a lot of new things happening, and every time there's a new technology, something fun, a new feature, you know the bad guys are not too far behind, cooking up a way to exploit it. Think of the different layers of security. We'll be back with more content on that particular subject. Office 365 being so popular is such a target, and then I'm very biased, but you should try Office Protect. You should install it on your own organization. Consider it for your client. It is actually very low cost, much cheaper than any of the advanced protection solution I mentioned today. So if you have any questions, talk to your account representative. You can put them in the box here, or you can call us. If you're not a partner yet, you should definitely consider SherWeb and signing up. Let's look at a few of the questions. So only a few questions. Don't hesitate, people. Like if you have questions. One of the question is, my Office 365 is not with SherWeb. Can I still use Office Protect? Yes, you can. So wherever your Office 365 is, even if it's an enterprise agreement for larger clients, if it was bought directly by a credit card on office.com, you can apply Office Protect to any kind of organization. It does not matter. Obviously, if you use Office Protect, we'll probably talk to you about moving your Office 365, but that's a different conversation. So any tool to flag spear phishing or SEO frauds? SEO, but the email address is not there. So yes, of the solution that I propose, Proofpoint will do that. We'll do the protection against spear phishing or SEO fraud, as well as some of the solution within Office 365 directly. They're not quite as good for spear phishing, but they're there anyway. The specific one that I described, the cloud somewhere, where you install a third-party app, will actually be blocked by Office Protect. In Office Protect, one of the settings that we recommend that you set is not is you can turn off the ability for normal users to install third-party app completely. So even if they do click and they try to install it, they'll be stopped by the system. Somebody asked about NFR. So NFR is not for resale. SherWeb just introduced it to it's being soft launched basically. So talk to your account representative. But we do have now a program where for your own organization, you could get access to a lot of our products at a discount. And in the case of Office Protect, it's actually free. So when an account gets hijacked, can they change account password? So that's a good question. Yes, absolutely. That's usually one of the things that bad guys will do is they'll change the password. How will it affect recovery? It usually shouldn't. If you have backups, you should be able to restore them. Worst case scenario is you restore them to a different account. But that's why I said like recovery is your security blanket. Like you gotta have it. Is there a combination or greater security protection if you have Microsoft 365? So Microsoft 365 is an interesting product. It's basically a bundle that Microsoft created. It's very custom. So it's Windows. It's a Windows license, but it comes with a bit more than that. It comes with Office 365, obviously, but it also comes with some security management, and it does increase security a lot, especially for your Windows 10 device. It will help you with device management. It will help you with the implementation. There's some of the features of EMS, Enterprise and Mobility Security, in Microsoft 365. I can't go into a ton of detail, but yes, absolutely, it will help with the security, especially the security of your desktop. When we're talking about Office Protect, we're really talking about the security of your Office 365 account. There's a big focus on it. We wanted to make the tool as simple as possible, so it's very targeted right now. Yes, so one comment from one of our partners is one thing when you're doing a recovery of an Office 365 account is to make sure you remove any rules that the bad guy may have put in place. So good call. I'm happy you mentioned it. It's one of the things that Office Protect will check. So we make sure there's no data exfiltration rules that are set in your account, either by it. Honestly, the most often when we see it, it's somebody that doesn't know better. So they have an Office 365 account, but they prefer to use their Gmail account or something. So they put in a rule that forwards every email from the company into that Gmail account. That's just bad practice, honestly, even for somebody that's doing it not to be bad or evil, because it sends a lot of the data, and it could be sensitive data outside the control of your manager. You as a partner, basically, once it's gone to their Gmail, you can't really do anything about it. But also bad guys will often do that. They'll break into an account and they won't do any damage. They'll just put a rule in that forwards a copy of the email to them outside the organization. And if they're attacking, so if it's ransomware, they probably won't do that. They'll just scrap everything and make you pay for it. But if they're breaking in, like if it's a more advanced attack and they're breaking in to get information, most often they'll try to be undetected. And one of the ways that they do that is they'll put in a rule. Office Protect will flag that rule and tell you, hey, probably shouldn't have that, and then you can take action. One thing you can do when you take actions, talk to your partner, talk to your client. Client will be happy because you talk to them and you're like, hey, I was watching your account and I have something that I spotted. And then the other thing is, if they didn't do it, well, somebody else did it, and then you should probably take action. Maybe that's a compromised account. So I ran a little bit long already, so I'm going to hand here today. Like I said, security is great. Thanks for the questions. That's great. You guys really seem to be seeing some of the same scenarios that we are seeing. One thing about Office Protect, it's built internally here at SherWeb completely. It's 100% our own IP. One of the advantages of that is we're very close to the partner as they're using it, and we love the feedback. Already a lot of features that have gone into Office Protect in the last few months have come from our partners. So give it a shot, see how much it makes your life simpler. If it doesn't do everything you want, just let us know what else it could do to make your life easier, and chances are we'll put it into the product. So I want to thank everybody for being here today. If you have any questions, don't hesitate. Talk to your partner account representative, send us an email, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.